Committee will come to order. Without objection, the chair reserves the right to recess the hearing at any time. The presidential oath of office requires the President of the United States to do two things: faithfully execute his or her office and protect and defend the Constitution. That oath, of course, cannot be honored if the President does not first defend the country. If our national security is jeopardized, if our country is left undefended, the necessity to faithfully execute the office becomes moot. Where there is no country, there is no office to execute. And so the duty to defend the nation is foundational to the President's responsibilities. But what of this second responsibility, to defend the Constitution? What does that really mean? The founders were not speaking, of course, of a piece of parchment. Rather, they were expressing the obligation of the President to defend the institutions of our democracy, to defend our system of checks and balances that the Constitution enshrines, to defend the rule of law, a principle upon which the idea of America was born, that we're a nation of laws, not men. If we do not defend the nation, there is no Constitution. But if we do not defend the Constitution, there is no nation worth defending. Yesterday, we were presented with the most graphic evidence yet that the President of the United States has betrayed his oath of office, betrayed his oath to defend our national security, and betrayed his oath to defend our Constitution. For yesterday, we were presented with a record of a call between the President of the United States and the President of Ukraine, in which the President, our President, sacrificed our national security and our Constitution for his personal political benefit. To understand how he did so, we must first understand just how overwhelmingly dependent Ukraine is on the United States, militarily, financially, diplomatically, and in every other way. And not just on the United States, but on the person of the President. Ukraine was invaded by its neighbor, by our common adversary, by Vladimir Putin's Russia. It remains occupied by Russian irregular forces in a long, simmering war. Ukraine desperately needs our help, and for years we have given it, and on a bipartisan basis. That is until 2 months ago, when it was held up inexplicably by President Trump. It is in this context, after a brief congratulatory call from President Trump to President Zelensky on April 21st, and after the President's personal emissary, Rudy Giuliani, made it abundantly clear to Ukrainian officials over several months that the President wanted dirt on his political opponent, it is in this context that the new President of Ukraine would speak to Donald Trump over the phone on July 25th. President Zelensky, eager to establish himself at home as a friend of the President of the most powerful nation on earth, had at least two objectives: get a meeting with the President, and get more military help. And so what happened on that call? Zelensky begins by ingratiating himself, and he tries to enlist the support of the president. He expresses his interest in meeting with the president and says his country wants to acquire more weapons from us to defend itself. And what is the president's response? Well, it reads like a classic organized crime shakedown. Shorn of its rambling character and in not so many words, this is the essence of what the president communicates. We've been very good to your country, very good. No other country has done as much as we have. But you know what? I don't see much reciprocity here. I hear what you want. I have a favor I want from you, though. And I'm going to say this only 7 times, so you better listen good. I want you to make up dirt on my political opponent, understand lots of it. On this and on that, I'm going to put you in touch with people, and not just any people. I'm going to put you in touch with Attorney General of the United States, my Attorney General, Bill Barr. He's got the whole weight of the American law enforcement behind him. And I'm going to put you in touch with Rudy. You're going to love him, trust me. You know what I'm asking, and so I'm only going to say this a few more times, in a few more ways. And by the way, don't call me again. I'll call you when you've done what I asked. This is, in sum and character, what the president was trying to communicate with the president of Ukraine. It would be funny if it wasn't such a graphic betrayal of the president's oath of office. But as it does represent a real betrayal, there's nothing the president says here that is in America's interest, after all. It is instead the most consequential form of tragedy, for it forces us to confront the remedy the founders provided for such a flagrant abuse of office, impeachment. Now, this matter would not have come to the attention of our committee or the nation's attention without the courage of a single person, the whistleblower. As you know, Director McGuire, more so than perhaps any other area of government since we deal with classified information, the Intelligence Committee is dependent on whistleblowers to reveal wrongdoing when it occurs, when the agencies do not self-report, because outside parties are not allowed to scrutinize your work and to guide us. If that system is allowed to break down, as it did here, if whistleblowers come to understand that they will not be protected, one of 2 things happen. Serious wrongdoing goes unreported, or whistleblowers take matters into their own hands and divulge classified information to the press in violation of the law and placing our national security at risk. This is why the whistleblower system is so vital to us, and why your handling of this urgent complaint is also so troubling. Today we can say for the first time since we have released this morning the whistleblower complaint that you have marked unclassified, that the substance of this call is a core issue, although by no means the only issue raised by the whistleblower's complaint, which was shared with the committee for the first time only late yesterday. By law, the whistleblower complaint, which brought this gross misconduct to light, should have been presented to this committee weeks ago, and by you, Mr. Director, under the clear letter of the law. And yet it wasn't. Director McGuire, I was very pleased when you were named acting director. If Sue Gordon was not going to remain, I was grateful that a man of your superb military background was chosen. A Navy SEAL for 36 years and director of the National Counterterrorism Center since December 2018. Your credentials are impressive. And in the limited interactions that we have had since you became director of NCTC, you have struck me as a good and decent man, which makes your actions over the last month all the more bewildering. Why you chose not to provide the complaint to this committee as required by law. Why you chose to seek a second opinion on whether shall really means shall under the statute. Why you chose to go to a department led by a man, Bill Barr, who himself is implicated in the complaint and believes that he exists to serve the interests of the president, not the office itself, mind you, or the public interest, but the interest of the person of Donald Trump. Why you chose to allow the subject of the complaint to play a role in deciding whether Congress would ever see the complaint. Why you stood silent when an intelligence professional under your care and protection was ridiculed by the president, was accused of potentially betraying his or her country, when that whistleblower, by their very act of coming forward, has shown more dedication to country, more of an understanding of the president's oath of office than the president himself. We look forward to your explanation. Ranking Member Nunes.
Thank you, gentlemen. I want to congratulate the Democrats on the rollout of their latest information warfare operation against the president.
I'm sorry, Devin.
And their extraordinary ability to once again enlist the mainstream media in their campaign.
Yeah, I'm going to interject here and skip. Devin Nunes is totally unqualified to be on the Intelligence Committee. He has no military background. He has no intelligence background. He's a toady. And he's shown up at the White House at very strange times and read statements at the White House lawn. So I'm going to skip Devin Nunes. And let me see how long, and I'm not even going to bother. I don't have time to wade through the BS of Devin Nunes. He's not carrying out the duties of Congress or the intelligence or protecting our intelligence, etc. So let me skip forward.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you will give today shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. You may be seated. The record will reflect that the witness has been duly sworn. Director McGuire, would you agree that the whistleblower complaint alleges serious wrongdoing by the President of the United States?
Mr. Chairman, the whistleblower...
Well, actually, I apologize, Director. Let me recognize you for your opening statement, and you may take as much time as you need.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Schiff, Ranking Member Nunes, and members of the committee, good morning. I'd like to begin by thanking the Chairman and the committee for agreeing to postpone this hearing for 1 week. This provided sufficient time to allow the executive branch to successfully complete its consultations regarding how to accommodate the committee's request. Mr. Chairman, I've told you this on several occasions, and I would like to say this publicly. I respect you, I respect this committee, and I welcome and take seriously the committee's oversight role.
Thank you.
During my confirmation process to be the director of the National Counterterrorism Center, I told the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence that congressional oversight of the intelligence activities is critical and essential to successful operations with the intelligence community. Having served as the director of the National Counterterrorism Center for 8 months and as the acting director of national intelligence for the past 6 weeks, I continue to believe strongly that the role of congressional oversight. As I pledged to the Senate...
No, I'm going to interject here. This is about the whistleblower complaint, which is quite extensive, and it just isn't limited to one phone call to the president of Ukraine. It's a series of calls and policies that are, well, I would say impeachable offenses, maybe certainly inappropriate. So this is the director of, this is, of course, he's the acting director because Donald Trump hasn't gotten around to appointing and confirming a real director. He's fired, I don't know how many people. Oh, she left. She either left or fired. I can't remember which. That's what happens with everyone in the Trump administration. They either leave in disgust or they're fired because they're not going to carry out. So this guy is acting This is Joseph McGuire. He's acting director of the National Intelligence, and he's going to speak on the whistleblower complaint, which is quite extensive. It's an 8-page or 9-page complaint, which was filed to the Inspector General, and then also we have the transcript of a phone call, but just one phone call. I'm sure there are other documents and other phone calls that the White House has released. By the way, this is the beginning of impeachment. I should have said that at the very beginning. This is the beginning of the impeachment. Now, whether the Senate convicts is another question, but and removes Trump. But this is collusion with Ukraine and bribery, and it's a cover-up because they have a special secret server. I'm talking about Trump. Trump has set up a secret, what would you call it, filing device or archiving device, which only a few people have access to, and it's extremely top secret, which means he's trying to cover up these talks with these people. And the phone call was to get dirt, you like that word, dirt on his probable opponent in the next election, which would be Joe Biden. So the whole idea was to get dirt on Joe Biden from the Ukrainians, and then the Ukrainians would get a bunch of military aid, which they desperately need, apparently, because Russia's invading them. So this whole thing stinks, and it's impeachable. It's just one of the zillion things that's impeachable, and it's only the scandal of the week. Last week it was another scandal with Scotland and Ireland and Puerto Rico reconstruction. It's everything that Trump does is practically corrupt. But you guys voted for him. I'm going to say yeah. WBCK, you voted for him. Rank, you voted for him. Tim Collins, you voted for him, right? And Michigan voted for him barely by, 10,000 votes, 20,000 votes. So I'm thanking you people, because here we are. This man, I'm talking about Trump now, this man lies about almost everything, okay? And he doesn't care about the country, and all he's interested in doing is making a lot of money for himself and building a Trump Tower in Moscow, and I don't know, Trump Towers everywhere, I don't know, making a lot of money, that's all he cares about. It's Trump first, America way down there. So this is the beginning. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to cover this story, or not unfortunately, well, it's unfortunate for the country. It's unfortunate for everyone, because the impeachment will go on with all this is just the beginning of this scandal. Okay, so we don't know how many times Trump contacted this person in Ukraine. Rudy Giuliani was supposed to go over to the Ukraine. Pence has met with this guy in Ukraine. The president of Ukraine, I don't even know his name, I'm forgetting it. This president of Ukraine was supposed to contact Robert Barr. So Barr is implicated. So let's go quickly. The people that are implicated are Trump, Barr, Rudy Giuliani, Pence. Who am I missing? I think there's one more. Okay, well, at least 4 people. Rudy Giuliani, Barr, Pence, Trump. Oh, maybe Pompeo. I don't know. Certainly those 4. So this, folks, is the beginning of a long process and it's going to consume hours or days and weeks of how much of a criminal is Trump. And let me just say here also, Trump has always been a scam artist. He's always lied about things. He lies about how many floors are in the Trump Tower. He lies about how much money he's made. He inherited most of his money, but he has to lie about that. He has to say, I have made $1 billion, when I don't think he hasn't ever reached $1 billion level. and half of that was inherited. And then he went bankrupt so many times, I think he's lost that. But so this is the beginning of impeachment. Okay? So here we go. It's going to take the next year. Okay.
Pledge to you today that I will continue to work closely with Congress while I'm serving either in this capacity as Acting Director of National Counterterrorism or when I return to the National Counterterrorism Center to ensure you are fully and currently informed of intelligence activities to facilitate your ability to perform your oversight of the intelligence community. The American people expect us to keep them safe. The intelligence community cannot do that without this committee's support. Before I turn to the matter of hand, there are a few things I would like to say. I am not partisan and I am not political. I believe in a life of service and I am honored to be a public servant. I served under 8 presidents while I was in uniform. I have taken the oath to the Constitution 11 times. The first time when I was sworn into the United States Navy in 1974, and 9 times during my subsequent promotions in the United States Navy. Most recently, former Director Dan Coates administered the oath of office last December when I became the Director of the National Counterterrorism Center. I agree with you. The oath is sacred. It's the foundation of our Constitution. The oath to me means not only that I swear in true faith and allegiance to that sacred document, but more importantly, I view it as a covenant I have with my workforce that I lead and every American, that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of my office. I come from a long line of public servants who have stepped forward even in the most difficult times and austere times to support and defend our country. When I took my uniform off in July of 2010, it was the first time in 70 years that an immediate member of my family was not wearing the cloth of the nation. As a Naval Special Warfare Officer, I had the honor of commanding at every level in the SEAL community. It was at times very demanding, but the rewards of serving in America's Special Operations community more than make up for the demands. After my retirement, I was fortunate to work for a great private sector firm. I left the business world after 3 years to lead a nonprofit charity. Some question why I would leave a promising business career to run a charity. The answer was quite simple. It was another opportunity to serve. I led a foundation dedicated to honoring the sacrifice of our fallen and severely wounded special operators. The foundation I led enabled hundreds of children of our fallen to attend college. It was extremely meaningful and rewarding. In the winter of 2018, I was asked by former Director Dan Coates to return to government service to lead the National Counterterrorism Center. This request was totally unexpected and was not a position I sought. But then again, it was another opportunity to serve my country. In particular, I knew that many of the young sailors and junior officers that I had trained 20 years earlier were now senior combat veterans, deploying and still sacrificing. I decided if they could continue to serve, returning to government service was the very least I could do. And now, here I am, sitting before you as the Acting Director of National Intelligence. With last month's departure of Dan Coates and Sue Gordon, 2 exceptional leaders and friends, I was asked to step into their very big shoes and lead the intelligence community until the President nominates and the Senate confirms the next Director of National Intelligence. I accepted this responsibility because I love this country. I have a deep and profound respect for the men and women of our intelligence community and the mission we execute every day on behalf of the American people. Throughout my career, I have served and led through turbulent times. I have governed every action by the following criteria. It must be legal, it must be moral, and it must be ethical. No one can take an individual's integrity away. It can only be given away. If every action meets those criteria, you will always be a person of integrity. In my nearly 4 decades of public service, my integrity has never been questioned until now. I'm here today to unequivocally state that as acting DNI, I will continue the same faithful and nonpartisan support in a matter that adheres to the Constitution and the laws of this great country, as long as I serve in this position for whatever period of time that may be. I want to make it clear that I have upheld my responsibility to follow the law every step of the way in the matter that is before us today. I want to also state my support for Whistleblower and rights and the laws. Whistleblowing has a long history in our country, dating back to the Continental Congress. This is not surprising, because as a nation, we desire for good government. Therefore, we must protect those who demonstrate courage to report alleged wrongdoing, whether on the battlefield or in the workplace. Indeed, at the start of ethics training in the executive branch each year, we are reminded that public service is a public trust. And as public servants, we have a solemn responsibility to do what's right, which includes reporting concerns of waste, fraud, and abuse, and bringing such matters to the attention of Congress under the Intelligence Community Whistleblower Protection Act. I applaud all employees who come forward under this act. I am committed to ensuring that all whistleblower complaints are handled appropriately and to protecting the rights of whistleblowers. In this case, the complainant raised a matter with the Intelligence Community Inspector General. The Inspector General is properly protecting the complainant's identity and will not permit the complainant to be subject to any retaliation or adverse consequences for communicating the complaint to the Inspector General. Upholding the integrity of the intelligence community and the workforce is my #1 priority. Throughout my career, I relied on the men and women of the intelligence community to do their jobs so I could do mine, and I could personally attest that their efforts saved lives. I would now like to turn to the complaint and provide a general background on how we got to where we are today. On August 26th, the Inspector General forwarded a complaint to me from an employee in the intelligence community. The Inspector General stated that the complaint raised an urgent concern, a legally defined term under Whistleblower Protection Act that has been discussed at length in our letters to the committee on September 16 and 17.
Urgent
Before
concern.
I turn to the discussion about whether the complaint meets the definition of urgent concern, I first want to talk about an even more fundamental issue. Upon reviewing the complaint, we were immediately struck by the fact that many of the allegations of the complaint are based on a conversation between the president and another foreign leader. Such calls are typically subject to executive privilege. As a result, we consulted with the White House counsel's office, and we were advised that much of the information in the complaint was, in fact, subject to executive privilege, a privilege that I do not have the authority to waive. Because of that, we were unable to immediately share the details of the complaint with this committee, but continued to consult with the White House counsels in an effort to do so. Yesterday, the President released the transcripts of the call in question, and therefore, we are now able to disclose the details of both complaint and the Inspector General's letter transmitting to us. As a result, I have provided the House and Senate Intelligence Committees with the full, unredacted complaint, as well as the Inspector General's letter. Let me also discuss the issue of urgent concern. When transmitting a complaint to me, the Inspector General took the legal position that because the complaint alleges matters of urgent concern, and because he found the allegations to be credible, I was required under the intelligence community whistleblower.
Okay, for Donald Trump and for the WBCK audience and Tim Collins, maybe, and Brian. Oh, I'm naming names. Sorry. What did he just say? He said urgent concern and very credible, or was it highly credible? Complaint. Okay, which was directed against the president.
Protection Act to forward the complaint to our oversight committees within 7 days of receiving it. As we have previously explained in our letters, urgent concern is a to alleges matters of urgent concern. Intelligence committees with the full, unredacted complaint, as well as the Inspector General's letter. Let me also discuss the issue of urgent concern. When transmitting a complaint to me, the Inspector General took the legal position that because the complaint alleges matters of urgent concern, and because he found the allegations to be credible, I was required under the Intelligence Community Whistleblower Protection Act to forward the complaint to our oversight committees within 7 days of receiving it. As we have previously explained in our letters, urgent concern is a statutorily defined term. To be an urgent concern, the allegations must, in addition to being classified, assert a flagrant, serious problem, abuse, or violation of law, and relate to the funding, administration, or operation of an intelligence activity within the responsibility of the Director of National Intelligence. However, this complaint concerns conduct by someone outside the intelligence community, unrelated to funding, administration, or operation of an intelligence activity under my supervision. Because the allegation on the face did not appear to fall in the statutory framework, my office consulted with the United States Department of Justice Office of Legal Counsel and we included the Inspector General in those consultations. After reviewing the complaint and the Inspector General's transmittal letter, the Office of Legal Counsel determined that the complaint's allegations do not meet the statutory requirement, definition concern, legal urgent concern, and found that I was not legally required to transmit the material to our Oversight Committee under the Whistleblower Protection Act. An unclassified version of that Office of Legal Counsel memo was publicly released. As you know, for those of us in the executive branch, Office of Legal Counsel opinions are binding on all of us. In particular, the Office of Legal Counsel opinion states that the President is not a member of the intelligence community, and the communication with the foreign leader involved no intelligence operation or activity aimed at collecting or analyzing foreign intelligence. While this OLC opinion did not require transmission of the complaint to the committees, it did leave me with the discretion to forward the complaint to the committee. However, given the executive privilege issues I discussed, neither the Inspector General nor I were able to share the details of the complaint at the time. When the Inspector General informed me that he still intended to notify the committees of the existence of the complaint, Mr. Chairman, I supported that decision to ensure the committees were kept as informed as possible of this process move forward. I want to raise a few other points about the situation we find ourselves in. First, I want to stress that I believe that the whistleblower and the Inspector General have acted in good faith throughout. I have every reason to believe that they have...
Okay, this is to Donald Trump and to the people that voted for Donald Trump and the people that think this is a big conspiracy by a bunch of spies and, the deep state. He just said that they acted in good faith, both the whistleblower and the Inspector General. Did you hear that, WBCK and Trumpers in Calhoun County? Yep, they acted in good faith. So if you try to smear the whistleblower and you try to smear the Inspector General, I think it's going to fail, and we'll have impeachment will go forward, maybe quicker. Yeah, I'll repeat that.
I want to stress as possible of this process move forward. I want to raise a few other points about the situation we find ourselves in. First, I want to stress that I believe that the whistleblower and the Inspector General have acted in good faith throughout. I have every reason to believe that they have done everything by the book and followed the law, respecting the privileged nature of the information and patiently waiting while the executive privilege issues were resolved. Wherever possible, we have worked in partnership with the Inspector General on this matter. While we have different opinions on the issue whether or not it is an urgent concern, I strongly believe in the role of the Inspector General. I greatly value the independence he brings to and his dedication and his role in keeping me and the committees informed of matters within the Intelligence Committee. Second, although executive privilege prevented us from sharing the details of the complaint with the committees until recently, this does not mean that the complaint was ignored. The Inspector General, in consultation with my office, referred this matter to the Department of Justice for investigation. Finally, I appreciate that in the past, whistleblower complaints may have been provided to Congress regardless of whether they were deemed credible or satisfied the urgent concern requirement. However, I am not familiar with any prior instances where a whistleblower complaint touched on such complicated and sensitive issues, including executive privilege. I believe that this matter is unprecedented. I also believe that I handle this matter in full compliance with the law at all times, and I am committed to doing so, sir. I appreciate the committee providing me this opportunity to discuss this matter and the ongoing commitment to work with the Congress on your important oversight role. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Director. Would you agree that the whistleblower complaint alleges serious wrongdoing by the President of the United States?
The whistleblower complaint involved the allegation of that. It is not for me and the intelligence community to decide how the President conducts his foreign policy or his interaction with leaders of other countries, sir.
Well, I'm not asking you to opine on how the President conducts foreign policy. I'm asking you whether, as the statute requires, this complaint involved serious wrongdoing, in this case by the President of the United States, an allegation of serious wrongdoing by the President of the United States. Is that not the subject of this complaint?
Yes, that is the subject of the allegation of the complaint. And two things, Mr. Chairman.
And let me ask you about that. The Inspector General found that serious allegation of misconduct by the President credible. Did you also find that credible?
I did not criticize the Inspector General's decision on whether or not it was credible. My question was whether or not it meets the urgent concern and the 7-day time frame that would follow once I was notified.
My question, Director.
I have no question in his judgment that he considers it a serious matter.
Well,
issue that I don't.
And you would concur, would you not, Director, that this complaint alleging serious wrongdoing by the President was credible?
It's not for me to judge, sir. It
is for you to judge, apparently. I mean, I agree it's not for you to judge. You shall provide it to Congress. But indeed, you did judge whether this complaint should be provided to Congress. Can we at least agree that the Inspector General made a sound conclusion that this whistleblower complaint was credible?
That is correct. That is in the cover letter that's been provided to the committee. I believe that's also being public. The decision and the recommendation by the Inspector General that, in fact, the allegation was credible.
Can we also agree that it was urgent that if the President of the United States was withholding military aid to an ally, even as you received the complaint, and was doing so for a nefarious reason, that is to exercise leverage over the President of Ukraine to dig up manufactured dirt on his opponent, can we agree that it was urgent while that aid was being withheld?
There are two things.
I'm talking about the common understanding of what urgent means, because Inspector General said this was urgent, not only in the statutory meaning, this was urgent as everyone understands that term. Can we agree that it was urgent?
It was urgent and important, but my job as the Director of National Intelligence was to comply with the Whistleblower Protection Act and to adhere to the definition of urgent concern, which is a legal term.
And to adhere to the meaning of the term shall.
Yes, sir.
In this case, you sought a second opinion on whether shall really means shall by going to the White House.
No, sir. There were two things, as I said in my statement. One, it appeared that it also had matters of executive privilege. I am not authorized as the Director of National Intelligence to waive executive privilege.
And at any time over the last month that you held this complaint, did the White House assert executive privilege?
Mr. Chairman, I have endeavored.
I think that's a yes or no question. Did they ever assert executive privilege?
They were working through the executive privilege procedures in deciding whether or not to exert executive privilege. And
So they never exerted executive privilege. Is that the answer?
if, Mr. Chairman, if they did, we would not have released the letters yesterday and all the information that has been forthcoming.
Now, the first place you went was to the White House. Am I to understand that from your opening statement? It wasn't to the Department of Justice. First place you went for a second opinion was to the White House?
I did not go for a second opinion. The question was, is the information contained here subject to executive privilege, not whether or not it met urgent concern.
And so the first place you went for advice as to whether you should provide the complaint as the statute requires to Congress was the White House.
I am not authorized, as the Director of National Intelligence, to provide executive privileged information. I think it is prudent, as a member of the executive branch, to check to ensure that, in fact, it does not.
I'm just asking about the sequencing here. Did you first go to the White House to determine whether you should provide a complaint to Congress?
No, sir, that was not the question. The question was whether or not it has executive privilege, not whether or not I should send it on to Congress.
Okay. Is the first party you went to outside of your office to seek advice, counsel, direction, the White House?
I have consulted with the White House counsel, and eventually we also consulted with the Department of Justice Office of Legal Counsel.
And my question is, did you go to the White House first?
I went to the Office of Legal Counsel for advice. Yes, sir.
Well, I'm asking which you went to first. Did you go to the Department of Justice Office of Legal Counsel first, or did you go to the White House first?
I went to the office, my team, my office, went to the Office of Legal Counsel first to receive whether or not the matter in the letter and in the complaint might meet the executive privilege. They viewed it and said, we've determined that it appears to be executive privilege. And until executive privilege is determined and cleared, I did not have the authority to be able to send that forward to the committee. I worked with the Office of Legal Counsel for the past several weeks to get resolution on this. It's a very deliberate process.
Well, Director, I'm still trying to understand the chronology. So you first went to the Office of Legal Counsel, and then you went to White House counsel?
We went, and then to the, repeat that, please, sir.
I'm just trying to understand the chronology. You first went to the Office of Legal Counsel, and then you went to the White House counsel?
No, sir. No, sir. No, we went to the White House first to determine, to ask the question.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know is chronology. So you went to the White House first. So you went to the subject of the complaint for advice first about whether you should provide the complaint to Congress.
There were issues within this, a couple of things. One, it did appear that it has executive privilege. If it does have executive privilege, it is the White House that determines that. I cannot determine that as the Director of National Intelligence.
But in this case, the White House, the President is the subject of the complaint. He's the subject of the wrongdoing. Were you aware when you went to the White House for advice about whether evidence of wrongdoing by the White House should be provided to the Congress, were you aware that the White House counsel has taken the unprecedented position that the privilege applies to communications involving the President, when he was president, involving the president when he wasn't president, involving people who never served in the administration, involving people who never served in the administration even when they're not even talking to the president? Were you aware that that is the unprecedented position of the White House you went to for advice about whether you should turn over a complaint involving the White House?
Mr. Chairman, as I said in my opening statement, I believe that everything here in this matter is totally unprecedented. And that is why my former directors of national intelligence forwarded them to you whether or not it met urgent concern or whether it was serious. This was different. And to me, it just seemed prudent to be able to check and ensure as a member of the executive branch before I sent it forward.
I just have a couple more questions. I'm going to turn over to the ranking member, and he may consume as much time as I did. The second place you went to was the Justice Department, and you went to that department headed by a man, Bill Barr, who was also implicated in the complaint. And you knew that when you went to the Department of Justice for an opinion, correct? That Bill Barr was mentioned in the complaint?
Mr. Chairman, I went to the Office of Legal Counsel in consultation with the ICIG. He was a part of that to receive whether or not this met the criteria.
Yes, but that ICIG vehemently disagreed with the opinion of the Bill Barr Justice Department, did he not?
He still considered it a matter of urgent concern. However, as you know, opinions from Department of Justice, Office of Legal Counsel are binding on all of us in the executive branch.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think it's appropriate that you go to a department run by someone who's the subject of the complaint to get advice, or who is a subject of the complaint or implicated in the complaint, for advice as to whether you should provide that complaint to Congress? Did that conflict of interest concern you?
Mr. Chairman, when I saw this report and complaint, immediately I knew that this was a serious matter. It came to me, and I just thought it would be prudent to ensure.
I'm just asking if the conflict of interest concerned you.
Well, sir, I have to work with what I've got, and that is the Office of Legal Counsel within the executive branch.
Well, what you also had was a statute that says shall, and even then you said you had the discretion to provide it, but did not.
Because it did not meet the matter of urgent concern that took away the 7-day timeline, I have endeavored to work with the Office of Legal Counsel in order to get the material to you, which you have provided to you yesterday. Now, I have to tell you, Chairman, it is not perhaps at the timeline that I would have desired, or you, but the Office of Legal Counsel has to make sure they make prudent decisions. And yesterday, when the President released the transcripts of his call with the President of the Ukraine, then they could no longer, executive privilege no longer applied, and that is when I was free to be able to send the complaint to the committee.
Director, you don't believe the whistleblower is a political hack, do you?
I don't know who the whistleblower is, Mr. Chairman. To be honest with you, I've done my utmost to make sure that I protect his anonymity.
That doesn't sound like much of a defense of the whistleblower here, someone you found did everything right. You don't believe the whistleblower is a political hack, do you, Director?
I believe that, as I said before, Mr. Chairman, I believe the whistleblower is operating in good faith.
Well, then they couldn't be.
The law.
They couldn't be in good faith if they were acting as a political hack, could they?
Mr. Chairman, my job is to support and.
I have to interject here. Yeah, the attempt by the president and the Republican Party, or the Republicans that follow Trump, to smear the whistleblower. Okay, what did he just say? He said again that the whistleblower was acting in good faith, not making things up, not a hoax, etc., not a Democratic political operative, not part of the deep state conspiracy. This is so embarrassing. Not embarrassing. This is just a waste of time to have to do this. But I've got to point it out because there's a certain radio station that I think they advanced this notion this morning. Something about the deep state, yeah. So you're going to hear the hoax. Everything's a hoax. Anything that hurts Donald Trump is a hoax.
The entire intelligence community. That individual works for me. Therefore, it is my job to make sure that I support and defend that person.
You don't have any reason to accuse them of disloyalty to our country or suggest they're beholden to some other country, do you?
Sir, absolutely not. I believe that the whistleblower followed the steps every step of the way. However, the statute was one in this situation involving the President of the United States, who is not in the intelligence community, or matters underneath my supervision, did not meet the criteria for urgent concern.
No, I'm just asking about the whistleblower right now.
I think the whistleblower did the right thing. I think he followed the law every step of the way, and we just got stuck with.
Then why, Director, when the President called the whistleblower a political hack and suggested that he or she might be disloyal to the country, why did you remain silent?
I did not remain silent, Mr. Chairman. I issued a statement to my workforce telling and committing my commitment to the whistleblower protection and ensuring that I would provide protection to anybody within the intelligence community who comes forward. But the way this thing was blowing out, I didn't think it was appropriate for me to be making a press statement so that we counter each other every step of the way.
I think it was not only appropriate, but there's nothing that would have given more confidence to the workforce than hearing you publicly say, no one should be calling this professional who did the right thing a hack or a traitor or anything else. I think that would have meant a great deal to the workforce. So, Mr. Nunes, you're recognized.
Welcome, Mr. Director. It's a pleasure to have you here. And you're going to be part of a charade of legal word games. They're going to try to get you to say something that can be repeated by the media that is here that wants to report this story. The
media in Trump world, all the media is bad except Fox News and WBCK.
Get one thing straight, because one of the quotes they're going to use from you is you saying that this was a credible complaint. That will be used and spun as you're saying that
I just quoted it. I didn't spin it. I said credible.
You have not investigated the veracity or the truthfulness of this complaint.
That's correct, Ranking Member. The determination on credible was made by the IC Inspector General. He made the determination that it is credible, and he also made the determination of urgent concern. My question was not, I did not question his judgment there. The question I had was, does in fact this allegation of wrongdoing meet the criteria, the statutory criteria of urgent concern? And the other issue, as I said, complicated things. Did it in fact, the allegations within this whistleblower complaint involve executive privilege?
Thank you for clarifying that. Have you ever, you mentioned it a little bit in your testimony, but have you ever, or are you aware of any former DNIs who have testified about whistleblower complaints in the public?
Not to my knowledge, Ranking Member. I do not know.
Are you aware of any cases like this that were put into the spotlight? Would this be the way to handle it out in the public like this?
I am not aware of any, but I want to say once again, I believe that the situation we have and why we're here this morning is because this case is unique and unprecedented.
Okay. This situation is unique and unprecedented, and we're going through what is the beginning of an impeachment because the president is involved. That's the fact.
Our case is normally not handled out in the public.
All the other cases that came before either this committee or the Senate committee, whether or not they met the criteria of urgent concern, were forwarded because they involved members of the intelligence community who were in fact in organizations underneath the DNI's authority and responsibility. This one just did not come that way because it involved a member, an individual who is not a member of the intelligence community or an organization underneath the authority of the DNI. So this one is different from all others in the past that I am aware of.
So I want to get into how this all got out in the public over the last, this has basically been an orchestrated effort over 2 weeks.
Orchestrated? The complaint was not forwarded to Congress under law. 7 days or 14 days? And they were not following rules, or they delayed, and then they were subpoenaed, I believe. So this is not orchestrated. The administration delayed. The administration wanted to delay to claim executive privilege.
We were first told about it a week and a half ago, and we were told very specifically that the whistleblower did not want to get any of this information out. They didn't want it to leak out. So there were only a few potential groups of people that would have known about this complaint. you and your people within your office,
Yes, sir.
the people within the Inspector General's office, and the whistleblower and whoever that whistleblower gave this information to. So what I'm trying to ascertain is, how would it run in all the mainstream media outlets? How did they get, even though they got a lot of it wrong, but they had the basics of it, that it involved the President of the United States talking to a foreign leader. So did anybody, you or anybody in your office, leak this to the Washington Post or NBC News?
Ranking member, I lead the intelligence community. We know how to keep a secret. As far as how that got into the press, I really do not know, sir. I just know that it's all over the place, and as you said, it's been reported by different media for the past several weeks. Where they get their information from, I don't know.
So that, you know,
but it was not from the intelligence community, from me, or from my office.
Thank you, Director. So this is not the first time this has happened to this president. It happened with a call between the Mexican president, the Australian prime minister. So it's happened twice before that pieces of transcripts leaked out. And of course, this time it was leaked out again, and the president, thankfully, he was able to put this out because of the actions of this of the situation, as you said, that's unprecedented. Is it normal for the President of the United States to have their conversations leak out? This is the third time.
I would have to leave that to the White House to
Access Vision. Your voice, your community.